everybody. It's me. I've been taking a little time off to work on a few things, but I'm officially starting the podcast. Now, bear with me while I figure all of this out. This is the first time I've ever been doing this, so before I kind of get into everything that I want to actually be talking about, I just want to chat with you guys a little bit about myself. So, my name is Catherine. I go by Kat from a lot of my friends, most of my friends actually. I live and I grew up in Connecticut. I currently have 2 dogs and a cat, and they are my absolute world. I love them so much. Ask anybody, and I'm always showing pictures of them and talking about them 24/7. I'm currently 28 years old. My birthday is in September. I am a Libra. I don't know if that means anything to any of you, but I definitely am very much a Libra. If you look up the definition of a Libra, that is exactly how my personality is. So hopefully that doesn't clash with anybody. So during this podcast, I would really like to sit down with all of you, grab some coffee or tea or whatever you like to drink. Hey, grab an alcoholic beverage if you're of age. And we're just going to sit back and we're going to talk about things that have happened in Connecticut. I'm going to start off with Connecticut and then move my way throughout New England. I think that so many things have happened in Connecticut over the years, whether it was true crime, paranormal. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. I mean, hello, they made a movie, A Haunting in Connecticut. So obviously there's something going on here. And then New England. I just love New England as a whole. I love all the seasons that we get. We're currently in fall right now, and I just love all of the different colored trees. I love that it's snowing every once in a while. I'm not a big fan of the cold, but I'm definitely getting used to it. So I hope that you'll join me while we talk about all this kind of stuff. Now, I'm going to be doing this alone. I'm going to be having my boyfriend come on every once in a while to kind of chat with me about some of the cases that we're going to be talking about. And I definitely want to get some of my friends in on this as well. A lot of them have already come up to me and said, hey, I would really like to do an episode with you. So if you guys out there and if you're listening and we're friends, think of a case in Connecticut and come to me and we can do that together. You can come on the show and we can chat about it together, give our opinions, give different perspectives and all that stuff. So, yeah, that's really my introduction. I'm not really going to go too deep into myself because that's not really what this is about. Eventually, I would like to kind of talk about different things in my life. Maybe we can relate to certain things. But for right now, I'm just going to kind of jump into it and start talking about the case that I've prepared for you all. So for episode 1, I am going to talk about the Cheshire home invasion. Now, this was really a big case when this happened in 2007. So a lot of you, if you're from this area or watch the news or even listen to other podcasts, you might have already heard about this one. But I kind of wanted to start with something that's close to home with me. Now, I grew up in a town called Watertown, Connecticut, and Cheshire is only about 20 to 30 minutes, depending on where you want to go in Cheshire, and it's a very beautiful town. I've gone to coffee shops there. I've gone to breakfast, lunch, and dinner in some of the restaurants there, and I think it's a very beautiful town. So let's talk about it. The Cheshire home invasion. So the Pettit family or the Petit family, I've heard it said both ways, so I'm just going to stick with Pettit. I do apologize if I am saying it the incorrect way. So this family consisted of Jennifer and her husband William and their 2 daughters, Haley and Michaela. At the time that this took place, Jennifer was 48, William was 51, Haley was 17, and Michaela was 11. So a little bit about this family. Jennifer was a nurse and co-director of the health center at Cheshire Academy. So she actually met her husband William at a children's hospital in Pittsburgh when she was a new oncology nurse and he was a third-year medical student at the University of Pittsburgh. So later on in his career, William was an endocrinologist in Plainville, Connecticut. He was the medical director of the Joslin Diabetes Center at Connecticut Central Hospital. So him and his wife were both in the hospital scene. They both worked at hospitals, and it seemed to really make them close as a couple. And they, from what I've read, they loved their jobs. Now, Haley, who was 17, she just graduated from Miss Porter's School, which is a school in Connecticut, if you haven't heard of it before. She played varsity cross country, basketball, and crew, and she was an honor roll student. So while at Miss Porter's, she was elected to the senior leadership position at Athletic Association. She also won an award for exceptional community service. She was scheduled to attend Dartmouth, where she wanted to study medicine just like her parents. She was active in a fundraiser for MS because her mom was diagnosed with MS. So she set up a whole team, and every year they would do a walk. Their team was called Haley's Hope. Michaela, who was 11, attended Chase Collegiate School, which is in Waterbury, Connecticut. And after Haley was going to be going to college, Michaela was planning on taking over the MS team and renaming it Michaela's Miracles in honor of her mother having an MS. Michaela also really loved to cook for her family, which I think is just so cute. The girls were very close. They weren't super close in age. They were 6 years apart, but it seemed that they were getting along very well. So for the remainder of the episode, we're going to be talking about the crime that takes place on July 23rd. Well, technically July 22nd. So it starts where 48-year-old Jennifer Hawk Pettit and 11-year-old daughter Michaela went to Stop and Shop to get ingredients for dinner. That's all that they were doing. They were going to the local grocery store to pick up some dinner supplies so that Michaela can cook for her family when they get home. Unfortunately, they didn't know that they were being followed by 26-year-old Joshua Komisarjevsky. Later on, we do find out that Joshua saw them as being very affluent, very well off, very friendly, which they were. But we do end up finding out that Joshua did have a sexual attraction to 11-year-old Michaela. So he decided to follow them home to find out where they lived. When he does get to the family home, he notices the scale of it. He notices that they live in a very big house, one of the biggest on the block. So he thinks that there is some potential there to rob it. So I do want to talk a little bit about Joshua Komisarjevsky. I could be saying that wrong, but you know what? From all the different things that I've listened to, that's the best that I'm going to get. So at the time of this, Joshua was 26 years old. So he's from Torrington, Connecticut. He was born to a 16-year-old woman who was unfortunately impregnated by a local mechanic. He was barely out of his teens, and she was just a teenager herself. After she had the baby, she gave him up for adoption to Benedict and Jude, which was a very normal, what is normal? A very well-off family. In the early 1990s, Joshua's sister accused him of having sexually assaulting her. Unfortunately, when this was brought up in trial later on, Joshua's father, Benedict, said that he believed that that is definitely something Joshua was capable of. Unfortunately, I don't think his sister mentioned this until the trial happened. But when the father heard about it, he unfortunately believed everything that the sister was telling him. So in 2002, Joshua was arrested for 18 home invasions just in the span of 1 year. And he told his attorney every detail of those home invasions. He would go into people's houses when they were sleeping, rummage through their belongings, and finding out personal information about them. He then would used to go into his victims' rooms and listen to them breathing. He would watch them while they slept and just hear the quietness and just take all in the fact that he was violating them. He enjoyed knowing that there was nothing that they can do to stop him because they were asleep. He was standing above them while they were completely defenseless. He was sentenced to 9 years in prison, and he was paroled in 2007, where this horrible murder took place. So prosecutors were supposed to send the parole board a transcript of the sentencing that he had, but they never received it. So all of that information about what he did during that 1 year and everything that happened during his 9-year prison sentence was never received to the parole board. So no one knew what this man did. So he ended up going to Silliman, which was a rehab halfway house. That's where he met Stephen Hayes. So now let's talk a little bit about Stephen Hayes. Stephen Hayes now identifies as a transgender woman and uses female pronouns. For this episode, I am just going to be referring to them as Stephen because that is who they were at the time of the murder. So Stephen was convicted for the first time in 1980 at age 16. He was paroled in 1982, but violated it 7 weeks later. Between then and the murders, he was arrested around 30 times. He did spend most of his time incarcerated. His last arrest before the murders was in 2004. He smashed a car window with a rock, stole a woman's purse, and took off with it. He was paroled in 2006, where he was sent to Silliman halfway house, which is where he met Joshua. So now that we know a little bit about the background of the family and the two murderers, we can get on with the case. So I left off talking about how Jennifer and her daughter Michaela were going to Stop and Shop to get ingredients for dinner, and Michaela was going to be cooking dinner for her family. And that was when Joshua noticed them, took interest, and followed them home. So Stephen Hayes and Joshua arrived early on July 23rd around 3 a.m. They found Dr. Pettit asleep on the couch in the sunroom. Joshua entered the basement through a locked door, found a baseball bat, entered the sunroom, and hit Dr. Pettit 4 to 5 times. Stephen and Joshua bound his wrists together with zip ties. Dr. Pettit remembers hearing one of them say, "If he moves, put 2 bullets in him." Stephen and Joshua then went upstairs, found the children and Jennifer, and they were bound to their own rooms. Jennifer was bound to her bedroom, and the 2 girls were bound to their shared bedroom. The 2 men tied them by their wrists and ankles to their bedposts and put pillowcases on their head. After that, Joshua and Stephen ransacked the house for cash. After they looked around for a little bit and didn't find what they were looking for, they took Dr. Pettit to the basement and tied him to a support pole. They then kept looking for money, but again were still not satisfied. They eventually found a check register with $40,000 and decided to steal $15,000. I couldn't find anything that explained why they decided to steal $15,000 out of the $40,000, but that's what it said, so we're going to leave it at that. After this, surveillance from a gas station shows Stephen Hayes purchasing $10 worth of gas, and he split it between 2 cans. They took the cans from the Pettit home, filled them up, and then went back to the house. After they got back to the house, they took Jennifer to the bank. Stephen forced Jennifer to withdraw $15,000. Jennifer told the bank that men were holding her family hostage in their home and threatening to kill them, which I think is such a brave thing to do in her situation. So because of that, the bank surveillance cameras were able to capture the transaction. The bank manager called 911, and the manager was on the phone while Jennifer left the bank. Jennifer said that the invaders were being nice, and she thinks that they only wanted money. The police responded to the report by setting up a vehicle perimeter. After this, the men brought Jennifer back to the house and continued on what they were planning to do. Unfortunately, Joshua and Stephen did sexually assault Michaela. He thought that she was 14 or 16, which I don't think that makes any difference. Bleach was found on Michaela's clothes as they tried to eliminate the DNA. Stephen said that Joshua provoked him to sexually assault Michaela. Dr. Pettit, who was still chained to the pole in the basement, was able to hear his wife being assaulted. He started yelling and screaming and begging the men to stop. He then heard somebody say, "Don't worry, it's all going to be over in a couple of minutes." Stephen was busy with Jennifer, while Joshua ended up going down to the basement to check on Dr. Pettit as he was still yelling. He came upstairs and told Stephen that Dr. Pettit escaped. When Stephen heard this, he panicked and he strangled Jennifer. Some say he raped her after she was dead, but nobody's 100% sure because there was semen found in the body. Joshua and Stephen then doused Jennifer's body with gasoline. They went up to the daughters' bedrooms and completely drenched the bedrooms and the girls in gasoline as well. Later on, investigators found accelerant on the beds and clothing and the girls. The men then started a fire and fled the scene. Both Haley and Michaela died of smoke inhalation. Before she did die, though, Haley managed to escape her restraints, ran out of the bedroom, but did unfortunately die in the hallway. She was found at the top of the staircase with 3rd and 4th degree burns. The coroner could not tell if the burns happened before or after her death. When Michaela was found, she was still in her bedroom, tied to the bed. Again, her burns might have occurred when she was alive, or they could have happened after she was deceased. Mr. Pettit did end up freeing himself. He exited the house and crawled to a neighbor. The neighbor did not even recognize him. Stephen and Joshua left the scene in the Pettit family car, where they were arrested 1 block away after crashing into a police car. Because remember, the police knew that something was going on with Jennifer's family, so they did have cars lined up down the road. But unfortunately, they did not get to the house in time to stop them. It was said that the home invasion lasted 7 hours. Both men blamed the other one for being the mastermind, but Joshua actually blamed Dr. Pettit. Joshua called him a coward and said that he could have saved his family's life if he really wanted to. I'm not even going to comment on that. In 2010, Hayes was convicted of the murders and sentenced to death. Joshua was also convicted in 2011 and sentenced to death the following year. Despite protests from the sole survivors of this massacre, these criminals never saw execution. In 2015, Connecticut abolished the death penalty. There's actually a little update that happened in 2021. Joshua appealed on several arguments, including that the state's failure to move his trial out of New Haven, Connecticut, denied him a fair trial because so many people already knew about what was going on. For his words, not mine. His appeal also claimed that the state failed to disclose evidence, placed him in unconstitutionally strict prison conditions, and failed to correct false expert testimony against him. His appeal was then denied. So both men were sentenced to 6 consecutive life terms without parole, plus an additional 140 years behind bars. Since then, the two have been transferred to the Pennsylvania prison system as part of an interstate agreement, meaning that they are out-of-state inmates. Today, 41-year-old Joshua is serving his sentence at the medium-security Mahoney Correctional Institution in Frackville, and 58-year-old Stephen is incarcerated at the medium-security Banner Township Correctional Institution in Bellefonte. So that's all I really have for you guys today. This was a very short episode. I kind of got right to the point about everything. I'm still learning how and where to find all my information that I want to find and share with you guys, so I'm still working on that. But I really hope that you enjoyed learning about this case. It's a really tragic one, and if you didn't know about it, now you know about it, a little more information. I already have one planned for next week, but if you have any suggestions on cases that you want me to cover, you can go onto my Instagram, True Story Podcast. You can either comment on one of my posts or you can DM me, and I will be sure to get back to you. So stay tuned, stay spooky, and I will talk to you guys soon.